time to take a look at another story a lot of you are searching. Well, if you aren't searching for it, you may want to start. It involves the issue of female safety and your rights when it comes to traffic stops. Here are the details. This woman, Delray Good, was arrested a few weeks ago and charged with a felony after not immediately pulling over during a traffic stop. This happened while she was driving on a dark country road in Indiana late at night. Now, instead, worried about her safety, Wood drove less than a mile, that's a key detail, with her hazard lights on to a lit parking lot. Now Good says she's also at risk of losing her nursing job because nurses cannot work after being convicted of a felony. A spokesperson for the Porter County Sheriff's Office said the department supports the officer's decision. Joining us now to talk about this story, Delray Good's lawyer, Bob Harper, and former law enforcement executive and security expert, Matthew Horace. Bob, let's start with you. Where does the case stand right now?
She has her first court appearance on Tuesday morning, and it's an initial hearing, and she'll be entering a not guilty plea at that time.
Okay. Now, in the police report, the officer states that Miss Wood was, quote, highly agitated and uncooperative. Bob, does Miss Wood dispute that?
She does. Number one, the police report is clear that she wasn't arrested for being uncooperative. She was arrested for not stopping her vehicle. We provided you the charging information, so it's clear that's true. This officer followed her probably for less than 45 seconds. It was less than a mile after he turned on his lights. By the way, your police report shows you he also turned on the spotlight on her car. She waved her hand out of the window. She turned on her blinkers, pulled into the parking lot. Already he called for other vehicles to assist him like it was a resisting arrest or somebody was running. So can you imagine him walking up after he did all that, walking up to her car and saying politely, ma'am, I need to write you a speeding ticket or something? I'm sure he was very agitated.
Sure.
She does say that she told him, and he says in this report, she told him she had the right to drive to a place of safety, which is what she did.
All right, Bob, and this is late at night. She's alone. She's a woman. Matthew, is that enough? You just heard what Bob's versions of the events are, or his client's version of events are. Do you think that's enough to arrest her, Matthew?
I think in this case, regardless of how anyone feels and regardless of how she feels or how the officer feels, the goal of police officers when they initiate a traffic stop is to ensure that the officers are safe, that the citizens are safe, and the public is safe. Anytime we meet any modicum at all of resistance raises the level of the initiation of the traffic stop. In this case, she was going 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. So the fact that it took seconds to stop her vehicle is really irrelevant. Every state I've ever lived in or held a license in, you take a test, and a part of that test is to acknowledge that you understand exactly what to do when emergency lights are behind you, to yield the right of way to emergency vehicles, or if police officers are attempting to stop you in the lawful performance of their duties, you're supposed to pull over and acquiesce to their authority.
Okay, and I'm assuming you're saying immediately, even though it was less than a mile later that she pulled. Okay, all right. Now, there was a similar situation in that same county this time last year where Portage police actually applauded another woman for doing the same thing, refusing to pull over for a person that was impersonating a police officer. The difference was that he was in an unmarked vehicle. Bob, how do you think this helps your client's case?
Well, I think not only does that help our case, in fact, they had those instructions on their website, but all over the United States, common sense has had many people involved in police work tell, especially females, that if you're on a dark road, and she was, and there's only 2 houses on that mile stretch, and if you're being stopped, you turn on your flashers and get to a place of safety and then stop. That's exactly what she did. Let's think about this for a second. Okay. Within a few seconds, she stopped. Now, let's say that
Bob, I want to cut you off there. I'm sorry. Just give me a second. I want to go to Matthew for a second. What do you think she should have done in this situation?
if she had any concern, and I understand the concern for her safety, if she had any concern, she should have dialed 911 from her cell phone, put it on the dash, and stopped and waited to determine if it was a good stop. And that argument doesn't really fly because the overwhelming majority of the United States outside of the urban areas consist of very rural areas. And what he is insisting is that when people are stopped on dark roads in rural areas, that they're supposed to try to find a lighted area to stop. And that's impossible to do in a large majority of the United States, particularly in very, very rural areas.
All right, Matthew, Bob, thank you guys so much for joining us on The Daily Show. We really appreciate your insight.